Welcome to Still Speak Podcast. Now, let's take a deep breath, like I mentioned last night, and go back to the beginning. It's been a whirlwind week for anybody who's been following the story of missing 22-year-old Gabby Petito. Brian Laundrie, her boyfriend, her fiance, we don't know for sure, and I say tomato, tomato. It's just a label or title. We know they were traveling alone together cross country. It doesn't really matter what their title was as far as the relationship was concerned. And we do know that they were together solely for July and August, and that's all that really matters. They left on July 2nd. Their first stop, July 5th, was in Kansas at Kansas Monument Rock. July 8th, Colorado Springs. July 10th, Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado. July 16th, Zion National Park, which is southwest Utah and Springdale area. July 20th, Cedar Breaks National Monument, also in Utah near Cedar City. July 21st, Bryce Canyon National Park, also in southern Utah. July 26th, which is roughly a month before Gabby last made contact, was to Mystic Hot Springs in Monroe, Utah. July 30th, Canyonland National Park, Mesa Arch. It's unclear where they were from July 30th until August 12th. August 12th was the domestic incident in Moab, Utah, but the unknown beginning part of August really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of the story because we know she was okay. But I'm going over the timeline and location so we can keep track of the places they visited and consider these as possible places that he may have taken her and left her or brought her there before heading back to Florida. You know, especially since he had been to those parks already and would be somewhat familiar with them. And I'm also sharing this again, even though I did it in my very first episode, because I'm going to now be adding in what facts and information we have learned since then into the timeline, but also, to re-list these places so that you and the public can check your videos and photos for anything that may be alarming, or if you saw them or their van in the background of your video or pictures. And many people are doing that. I said to do that in another video. I'm not saying that people are doing that because of me. I think they got the same idea, but I just wanted to reiterate to check your photos and videos, okay? You never know. And please, just hand it over to the FBI. We, the public, really don't need that information. We don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize the investigation, right? We want to help, not be a hindrance. So, we know that they were in Arches National Park in Moab, Utah on the 12th. This is a fact because of the domestic incident. They were at Canyonland National Park on July 30th, then Arches National on the 12th. And these two parks are only 30 minutes apart from each other according to Google. So they were in this general area for a while. So they most likely were really enjoying that area. This next part, cops have not confirmed. But Gabby's uncle posted a paper, and I told you about this already, but I'm just adding it to the timeline, saying that Brian went to Florida from August 13th to August 23rd. I'm not really sure where he got this information, but in a later interview, her mother seemed to confirm that this did happen, and she implied that Brian had moved Gabby's stuff to a storage unit. However, an article came out claiming that he went home from August 17th to August 23rd, and this article said that he was moving items from a storage unit to his parents' home. I'm not sure where this article got that information, and I don't know how anyone even knows why Brian went home if Brian and his family are not speaking, unless this is what Gabby had told her family when he was gone. Like, did she tell her parents that he went home to move items, or did they find out after the fact? And if they found out after the fact, then who's telling them this information if Brian and his family are not speaking? Was it his sister? Maybe. Was it somebody that knew he went home? Maybe. Why is there the conflicting dates, though, of 8/13 or 8/17? I don't really know. So that's an unknown thing. It's definitely not a fact, and we definitely don't know what he went for. I think the 8:13, and I've said it before, is more making sense to me than 8:17, because this would be like the day after their incident, and in my head I'm thinking, okay, maybe they weren't okay, like they made it seem. Maybe he got mad that cops ended up having to be involved, and maybe he was like, you know what, F this, I'm out of here, I'm going, home. And then maybe, once he was there, they rekindled, and then he went back. That being said, that would speak to what's happening right now and speaks to his character. If he was willing to leave his young, petite girlfriend in the middle of nowhere in an area that he's not familiar with once, he would do it again. Maybe this time she just didn't stay in a hotel like she supposedly did when he went to Florida in August. Regardless if it was the 13th or 17th, that's a lot of days to be gone. We're talking about 10 days or 6 days. And it couldn't be just to move items. That there has to be more to this. As I said, she did stay in a hotel, and this would make sense that she would be, uncomfortable staying in a van alone. However, I think we're all assuming that he flew home in August. But I don't think that's been said anywhere. I think it's just an assumption. Is it possible that he took so long, 6 days or 10 days, because he actually drove home and drove back? I know that sounds ridiculous, right? But it's possible. I don't think we actually know for sure that he flew. He could have driven. Is that why he took so many days? Right? Or was he gone that many days because he had no plans of going back, but eventually caved and made up with her and went back? And I think, if she had the van and he flew home and she stayed in a hotel because she was uncomfortable being alone out there, then I think that would speak to Gabby did not want to be left behind when Brian went home in September, right? Because she wasn't even comfortable being alone out there and wanted to stay in the protection of a hotel. So this whole idea that people are saying, like, maybe she just went to go live off the grid by herself. I mean, this girl didn't even want to stay in the van by herself while he was gone for 6 or 10 days. She stood in a hotel. So, I don't know. But Gabby's mother talked to Gabby through FaceTime on the 23rd or the 24th. I've not seen her pick which day it was for sure, at least not yet. On August 24th, Gabby was seen on camera checking out of a Salt Lake City, Utah hotel, like we just discussed, which we now know was the Fairfield Inn. From Arches National Park, where they were on the 12th, to Salt Lake City, Utah, where she stayed in this hotel, is 3.5 hours away, and this stop in Salt Lake City is en route to go from Arches National Park up to the Yellowstone area, which was a destination they had on their itinerary. On August 25th, it was the last time her mother, Nicole, spoke to Gabby, but it was on the phone only. Gabby told her that she was in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. Grand Teton is 5 hours from Salt Lake City, where she had checked out of that hotel the day prior, and Yellowstone, which was to be their next destination, was 54 miles away from there. Gabby's last social media post was from Ogden, about 40 miles from Salt Lake City, outside a place called the Monarch. On the 30th of August, a text was sent from Gabby's phone that said no service in Yosemite. This could be an autocorrect error, as I said in other videos, or it could have been intentionally sent by Brian to buy time and give an explanation why she was not contacting her family or to throw them off the trail, because I highly doubt they changed course and decided to go to Yosemite instead of Yellowstone and then went through Nevada, skipping over all those beautiful parks and landmarks and going straight to Yosemite. Plus, a friend of Gabby spoke out saying she was going to meet up with Gabby in Yellowstone after this friend's birthday, and they had spoken about it on the 27th, and this friend's birthday was on the 29th, but Gabby never reached out to her again about meeting up, which according to her was very unlike her. September 1st, police have said, was the day Brian and the van returned to Florida, which I can only assume they confirmed this by traffic lights or by neighbors' Ring cameras. You know, they would catch him pulling into the driveway. Maybe his sister disclosed this, but I doubt it because the spokesperson with the Northport police said that she didn't really have info that can help them. So I'm just going to assume here that they got footage of him pulling into the driveway, and this is how they know that date. On September 10th, Nicole, Gabby's mom, reached out to Brian after not being able to get a hold of Gabby, and he didn't answer the phone. When he didn't answer and he wasn't answering texts, she reached out to his mom, saying that she was worried about the kids and, you know, she hadn't spoken to them, wanted to know if they were okay, and Nicole never got a reply from her either. That evening, she went to report Gabby missing, and we have now learned that Gabby's father, Joe Petito, was involved in an incident with the Laundries on the 10th around 6:30 p.m. It does show in this police report that the incident was not at the Laundrie home, but it sounds like he may have been sending maybe some aggressive text, or maybe he was calling them nonstop because they weren't replying to them, is how I took this. And it makes sense because he actually lives in Vero Beach, which is 2.5 hours from Northport. If this is what happened, that means that the Laundries called on the father of a girl who, you know, is missing, and, you know, desperate to get them to answer the phone. And he, at the time, had no idea that Brian had returned and Gabby did not. Later in the evening of the 10th, Nicole tried to report her daughter missing at the police station near her, but it was dismissed. Like, she was just, like, dismissed. Like, you know, she's an adult, she's this happens often. And she returned on the 11th, and she was actually able to file at that point. Northport was Brian's location, so they went by the home, the police in that area, and that's when they saw that the van was there. I'm trying to pinpoint who said it, but either it was the police, the spokesperson for the police, or it was the Petito Schmidt lawyer that said cops did see Brian at the home on that first contact Saturday night, but was unable to obviously speak to him. I do know that the Petito Schmidt lawyer guy said that when cops went to the door, they were handed a lawyer contact number. So they had one on call before she was even reported missing. So in the context of her family trying to contact Brian and his family on the 10th, when they weren't answering, they then lawyered up. So after Joe Petito and Nicole Schmidt were trying to get a hold of them, it seems like they got a lawyer on call. Regardless, this changes things for me, and I said that before, because it wasn't like, hey, we want to talk to you, and he was like, well, I'm not speaking, and I'm going to contact a lawyer. It was more like, here, I already have one. Here's my lawyer's number, and they shut the door. I first heard the story on the 13th. It's now the 19th, so it's officially been over a week as of yesterday since Nicole reported Gabby missing. It's been 18 days since Brian returned to Florida without Gabby, and it's been 25 days since her mother last heard Gabby's voice. Almost immediately, friends of the couple told the media that they were just as shocked as everyone else and was trying to make sense of it. There were the war of words this week between the families through their lawyers, and the Laundrie family stayed adamant about their silence. Gabby's family hit the media circuit, and I'm blown away by the amount of interviews they have given, which just goes to show how desperate they are to find her. You don't see that in every case. I can barely keep up with the interviews they've done. What I love seeing is that both sets of parents, or both parents, I should say, are remarried, and all 4 of these individuals, Gabby's dad, stepmom, her mother, and stepdad, are all united for one goal, and that's to find a daughter they all love. The Laundries broke their silence on the 17th. I did a video about this, but it's not for the right reason. Their attorney reached out to Northport Police to say Brian's parents wanted to speak to the police. I'm sure Gabby's family, when they heard this, were thinking, this is it. They're going to tell us what they know about our daughter, except that's not what happened. Instead, with an angry and growing mob outside their front door, they told police that Brian was quote-unquote missing. Now, I'm going to call a spade here. He's not missing. He's disappeared. He's vanished. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Laundrie has left the building. He's everything but missing. Gabby is missing. Brian is not. The police and the Laundrie lawyer alerted the public about what was happening, and they confirmed the rumor that had quickly, circulated. And law enforcement gathered to form a plan. Yesterday, on the 18th, law enforcement gathered and focused in on Carlton Reserve, which appears to not be far at all from the Laundrie home, to hunt for Brian. According to the spokesperson with the Northport Police, who answered questions yesterday during the hunt for Brian Laundrie, and I say hunt because, come on, it is. Cops don't want this dude to get away before they locate Gabby. They don't want him to off himself, right? Because he's key in this story. But according to the spokesperson, they believe 100% that Brian was in his parents' home at one point this week. The Laundries did not share any information on Gabby during their meeting with police, and they had their lawyer on speakerphone the entire time as they spoke to the police about Brian and when they had last seen him. They are unsure if Brian is armed, and police were collecting clothes of Brian's, and that is why they had the brown paper bags that I mentioned in my other video, so they can get his scent to search for him. Northport Police spokesperson was asked if the family believes Brian is suicidal, and he said that he wasn't comfortable answering that. Personally, I'm going with, yeah, they do think that, but that's just my opinion. They did get permission to track both Brian and Gabby's phones. However, we don't know if they're even on. I'm going with no, they most likely are not on. They have obtained some cell phone tracking data, but they have to secure search warrants to get complete access to the phones. 6 agencies gathered to hunt for him. Officers were on foot, on ATVs, swamp buggies. They were using canine and bloodhounds, drones, and airboats. The park is 200 acres, but there's a bridge that leads to a 25,000-acre area. The park is muddy, wet, and has unpaved dirt roads. Allegedly, Brian went for a hike on Tuesday, according to his parents, to Carlton Reserve, but he never returned, and this is what prompted them to search this area. However, Northport spokesperson Josh Taylor said they were working to corroborate the story. Further, Brian's car supposedly was found at the reserve, which sounds like that is what his parents told investigators, and that the car was driven home. But it's unclear if Brian drove it home at some point and then left again, or they possibly had a spare key, or he had left his keys inside. They found the car, abandoned, and brought it home. We don't know. A reporter who's been at the house daily said that the car was not there on the 14th, but it did return to the driveway on the 15th, so take what you want from that. Taylor said outside the park, in regards to Brian, that, he's the type of person who's used to living off the grid, and he could be out in this area for months if he wanted to be. During the search yesterday, someone posted that they said that a body was found and that it was suicide related on the police scanner, and when I seen it when I was out yesterday, I immediately knew it was not true. No way. In a case this high profile. They're not going to say that on the scanner, knowing that everybody and their mom is listening in for clues. And, lo and behold, they came out saying that it was not true. And we know it wasn't true now for sure, because they're back out there today at sunrise looking for Brian. Brian apparently or supposedly was last seen with a hiking bag with waist straps on, which, either his parents thought he just needed to escape from all the madness for a day, or they, know way more or are helping and aiding him, or they're really naive and they don't, they did not think about the fact that he may try to flee, which I highly doubt. Give me a break. Which makes me wonder, are they truly concerned about him not returning? If so, do they think someone may have hurt him because of what's going on? Do they think he may have hurt himself because of what is happening? Do they know he fled and are aiding him? Or do they now believe he's involved in something far more nefarious happened than he told them since he decided to flee? And because, they decided it was best to tell the cops. So is this a way for them to help the cops to find Gabby by getting them to find Brian? Time will tell. They waited days to report this. I could see one day hoping that he would, spend a night out there and come home. Tuesday night though, Wednesday night, Thursday night, into Friday evening when police were called. That gives Brian a 3 to 4 day head start, depending on what time he left Tuesday. Given his parents' behavior during this entire week, it would not be shocking at all, and it would be shocking to think, and I think it's actually reasonable to consider, that they know he left intentionally to flee. For context, Friday her family contacted Brian and his parents, right? The 10th. Saturday her mom reported her missing. On the same day, cops went to the house. Tuesday was when Brian's family lawyer, Steve Bertolino, issued a statement that he understood that Miss Petito was missing, but in advice of counsel that Brian would not be speaking. And he basically said that the Laundrie family was going to be staying in the background during this time. The next day, Wednesday, is when police named Brian a person of interest, and the only real reason they did such was because he was the last person to be with her or seen her, and therefore, of course, they want to speak to him, and he's not speaking, so he's a person of interest. Richard Stafford, the attorney for the Petito and Schmidt family, said in a brief statement yesterday, quote, "All of Gabby's family want the world to know that Brian is not missing, he is hiding. Gabby is missing," unquote, and to that I say amen. Petito's stepfather, Jim, said Friday night as things were unfolding that he was happy that the Laundrie parents called police. He said he didn't know what to believe and that he was caught off guard about the news shared moments earlier and that he hadn't had a moment to even digest it. So this family was obviously, bombarded with this. A resident of Northport, Florida, posted a pic of a man who resembles Brian walking around his area just a short time before cops were called to the home. While it does resemble him, the Northport police spokesperson said that it appears the one in the picture has an arm tattoo and Brian does not, but they are investigating it. In my opinion, Brian looks like a lot of males his age, and I doubt with the circus that's outside his house that particular day, for sure, before cops arrived, I don't believe would willy-nilly just go walking around his neighborhood with nothing to hide his face, right? Like without a baseball cap on or a hoodie or a jacket or a visor or something to kind of disguise himself so that he can slip away from the people that are camped outside his home. Anything's possible. I'm just not seeing that being the case, but we'll see. As a side note, someone posted a video that they had seen the van as they traveled in a park. And they found this when they went back to review the footage, and they spotted the van in the footage. Several things here. One, I don't really understand posting things like this when it's technically evidence. So my stance is turn it over to the proper authorities and let them handle it. Two, if you posted it before telling the police, why would you do that? We should not want to jeopardize this investigation if we all want Gabby found. Three, if they wanted to post it because they wanted to kind of let other people know to look at their footage, they could have just made a video saying such without, showing the actual footage of the van. Like I did when the case first began. I said on this channel, check your photos and your videos because you never know if you caught something and you have no idea. And I even said it earlier. And four, many people are now dissecting the hell out of this video, and they believe they see someone digging in a field near the van. I'm going with it's not what you think it is. I can see what they're looking at, but it appears to be a very open, vast field with a zero coverage of any kind off a main driving trail in broad daylight. I really highly doubt he was digging a hole for her body there in the middle of the day, personally. This happens a lot in crime cases, though. Everybody starts zooming in and pixelating pics or making them blurry to try to make something out of nothing. In the Watts case, it was the video of Chris Watts leaving that morning. In the Letitia Stout case, involving Gannon, it was a video of her, Letitia arriving home just shortly before Gannon was reported missing, and people were like screenshotting and zooming in and like, oh my God, I see a foot. Oh my God, I see his hair. It was ridiculous. I can give you more examples, but it's not really necessary. It happens in cases like this. This is not the first time people have done that. Believe me, if anything is worthy in those videos that people are finding with the van in it, police are going to use all sorts of technology to dissect it themselves, and they'll know for sure what is and is not in the picture. If you have footage, give it to the police. The public does not need to see it, okay? Let's not mess anything up or jeopardize the investigation. As I'm putting this together, it was said that Sarasota County now also has helicopters up in the air searching for Brian and the reserve, in addition to the 6 agencies who were already out there working together. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, a search was set up for who this story is all about. Missing Gabby Petito in Grand Teton National Park, her last believed location. And the FBI in Denver tweeted that they were working with the National Park Services and Grand Teton as well, and doing ground surveys looking for Gabby. Now, if you recall, she was in Colorado at some point. This would make sense why they're looking, because like I said earlier, it could be that, because he was in Colorado already and he knew that area, for all we know, he could have brought her there, right? Back to a place that he was familiar with. We don't know. Grand Teton National Park said they were searching the Spread Creek dispersed camping area in the park and asked anyone who was in that area anytime between the 27th and 30th of August to please contact them if they had any interactions with Gabby, Brian, or seen the vehicle. Then the dates that I just mentioned are interesting because it was on the 25th that Gabby's mom last spoke to Gabby on the phone, and that's when she said she was in Grand Teton. And her mom did receive a text on the 27th and then again on the 30th that she doesn't believe was Gabby, and after that there was no communication from her home. So I believe they have this information that is making them shrink this time frame to the dates of 8/27 to 8/30. And the van video that I just spoke about off a dirt road that the couple had found in one of their videos allegedly was on the 27th, and it was close to this particular area of Spread Creek that they are searching. The search for Gabby is going to get really intense because the weather in that area is going to start to change. We're going into, fall and winter. So Let's hope she's found soon, one way or another. It's actually 35 hours from the Spread Creek area of Grand Teton, and they're searching that area. So from there to Northport, Florida, where Brian had returned to, is that 35 hours if you are taking 75 south, which seems to be the route they possibly took on their way up if you look at their itinerary versus this route. Just 2 days ago in Grand County, where Moab, Utah is, they made a post saying that they have now determined the murderers of Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner are not connected to Gabby Petito being missing. And this tells me that they have a good idea of who killed the newlyweds, but, maybe they didn't have enough to make an arrest just yet. So we could put that story aside as a possible connection. What's good about us considering that these two cases may be related is that now Crystal and Kylan's story got even more media coverage than it already did. So that's a plus, and hopefully they can get it solved. I will admit, it was really creeping me out that the location and dates were lining up, but I had a feeling that they weren't connected. This is a multi-state story and search. You have Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and Idaho, very close to Wyoming. If you include all the states on the route of 75 south where she could be. People have been asking if it could be that she did not get left behind or go missing from the Wyoming, Utah area, but possibly went missing along the route to Florida. Anything's possible. She could have been in the van and dropped off at some point, or, hate to say, disposed of, along that route, which would make it even more of a needle in a haystack than it already is. But I think if they were leaving that area and returning home, that Gabby would have somehow told her family this. And would Brian have taken the chance of getting pulled over with her in the van if she was possibly deceased? Possible. Again, Letitia Stout in the Gannon case did that. But I'm leaning more towards that the Yosemite text, I think, was intentional to throw the family off from Yellowstone and buy him more time. That's my personal opinion. But I said, that it also could be a mistake, typing fast, or an autocorrect issue. Why even bother to drop or dispose of her en route to Florida, where he could have just abandoned her in the vast area of, Teton or Yellowstone? But again, I really think that if they somehow, because they had a whole itinerary, right? And so her parents know that she wasn't supposed to be coming back anytime soon. So if they decided as a couple, this isn't working out, we're not getting along, let's just go back to Florida. I think at that point, Gabby would have let her parents know, hey, we're going back home, things aren't that great, and they would have known that. And she didn't do that. So I don't think that she was with him when he went back to Florida like so many people are considering or wondering. The next thing that people have been asking goes along with this, and they've been saying, could Gabby have gone missing from Florida? Again, plausible, but we know that cops probably found out that Brian got back, and they might have seen, a Ring bell camera from a neighbor, and if she was in that van at all, if they do have video, then they would see her, okay? I really don't think she's in Florida, and I really don't think she left with him to go back to Florida. And I think if they felt that that was even a possibility, they wouldn't be searching in Wyoming right now. I received a few comments and messages, and I've also seen people in groups outraged that they're using so many resources to hunt down Brian when he wouldn't even help them look for Gabby. I get that thought process, but remember, Brian's the only one to know where Gabby is for sure. His parents may know, but I doubt he told them the truth. Hunting for Brian is looking for Gabby, because if they find Brian, he may cave and speak to them. They don't want anything happening to someone who holds the answers to her location. Furthermore, like I said in yesterday's video, he's technically a citizen, not a suspect, and cops have a responsibility to citizens, and therefore they have to search for him regardless. They can't decline to not find him out of spite, but their underlining motive here is Brian is key to Gabby being found. So let's just be happy that they're diligently looking for him and using every resource possible to do such. There's a person on TikTok claiming that she picked up Brian hitchhiking. I know most of you have seen it. I'm not even going to break it down because I personally don't believe the story. She hasn't really provided any real proof of this happening, but the cops will know for sure if she did indeed contact them as she claims. The only thing I really saw her prove was that she was in this park around the same time as the couple. From my understanding and the way she explained it, it took an extensive amount of time for them to go 10 miles, so that's a red flag. Plus, again, if this is true, it's better to tell law enforcement and not the public, so I question the motive of sharing it publicly. I know you all and myself and the public are glad when people do this because, let's face it, we're nosy and want to know all the things. But if we truly want Gabby found, we should be discouraging people from releasing, potential clues or evidence. A woman claiming to be Gabby's best friend recently said that Gabby had a problematic relationship with Brian. Rose Davis alleges that Brian would hide Gabby's ID so she couldn't meet up with Rose at a bar, triggering an episode similar to the one that police investigated weeks before her disappearance. Quote, he's got these jealousy issues, and he struggles from what Gabby called episodes where he would hear things and hear voices and wouldn't sleep, unquote. She also said, quote, when I saw that Brian was back from the trip, my first thing that popped in my mind was maybe Brian had one of his episodes and I was just hoping he didn't have a snapping moment, unquote. She claims that Gabby had stayed at her home a few times because she needed a breather and didn't want to go home to him. Rose says that her and Gabby were so close that they would share locations with each other through an iPhone app. But she claimed that when Brian found out, he made Gabby delete the app. Rose said that she did try to get Gabby to reconsider her engagement to Brian. And she also said that Brian did not support Gabby in her blog. She said, quote, he was always charismatic, making Gabby breakfast almost every morning, but, you can see the jealousy side. He also wanted what he wanted when he wanted it, and he'd find a way to get it, not in a violent manner, but, if he didn't want Gabby to do something, he'd find a way to make it so she couldn't do it, unquote. Another alleged friend was asked in an interview if Gabby could have gone missing on her own accord, to which this friend replied, quote, I wish that that could be a possibility. I do. She's not a person that would just go off on her own like that. She's an independent person, but not like that. She wouldn't fall off the grid and not come in contact with her family. She would call her parents every day, sometimes a couple of times a day. So this is very, very out of the ordinary, unquote. Now, I used allegedly and supposedly when talking about these friends because often in these cases, people come forward claiming to be all sorts of people or claiming all sorts of things. So take what you want from what they're saying. There is one example here. There was a case of missing Heidi Broussard and her newborn baby daughter not long ago, and a quote-unquote friend was live on a YouTube channel talking about Heidi's fiance really, really badly. And as she was on this live, she was basically trying to imply that, the fiance might have done it because she knew them as a couple. And on this live, news broke that they actually had found Heidi's body and that it wasn't her fiance who was connected to the death of Heidi, but one of her friends. I'm not sure if that lady, was right. Like what she was saying, was it accurate? I don't know if it was true or not. But it was definitely done to make her fiance look worse than he possibly was. And as I said, it turned out he had absolutely nothing to do with it. But in other cases as well, you have all types of people who come forth claiming to know the couple, and then people in the group will argue with you if you say you don't believe them, and they'll say, like, why would they come out forward and say that? I don't know, but they do. Why do people confess to crimes that they didn't commit? I don't know, but they do. I don't have the answer. It's what happened. So I'm personally a very skeptical person, and I take all of these types of statements or interviews from alleged friends and what have you with salt, okay? You have to remember their friend's missing. So in their heads, they're thinking of every possible thing that they've heard her say or seen her do, and the same with Brian. And so in their head, they may be adding things that weren't actually the case, okay? You can believe that. You can believe them. That's fine. Just for me, personally, I'm a very skeptical person. An Idaho business owner said that Gabby, Petito, and Brian Laundrie stopped into their store on the way to Yellowstone National Park, and that they both seemed happy and were chatting about their travel plans. The owner of the Rustic Row in Victor claimed the couple popped into the shop for about 15 to 20 minutes on either the 25th or the 26th. The owner said that they told him that they were traveling from Florida and that they had just been to Teton Park and they were interested in going to Yellowstone, and this owner told them they can go to the west entrance. He also said that, I was going to say something else and then I switched course here. I think that, he claims that he called FBI, and I gotta wonder if this didn't turn out to be the dates that he thought it was. Only because they are searching in Grand Teton, which is not far from Yellowstone, granted. So, or maybe, it is accurate and credible. I don't know any reason why this shop would lie. They most likely have surveillance cameras. And I wouldn't say necessarily lie, but I'm just saying maybe they messed up the dates of when she was there. Who knows? We'll find out, right? Because as of now, they are searching Grand Teton. Brian's mother was spotted outside her home Sunday as they were searching for Brian. And Roberta refused to answer any questions from people outside the home. They were asking her, why aren't you helping? And things of the sort. So she retreated back inside. Another TikToker claimed that he went to the police and he thinks that he saw Brian in some bar on the 26th and that he was agitated and picked a fight with some man. Again, take it with salt. Check out how many followers these social media people get after they come forth with information to the public. It could be true or not. FBI will figure it out if it's credible and what have you. You don't get in trouble for calling in a tip unless it interrupts the investigation in some way. Meaning, they check into tips before they make any moves, and if it was a nothing burger, then that's not interrupting the investigation. That's just being a pain in the ass and wasting the tip hotline's time. Listen, if we go off of August 30th, which is 20 days ago, do you really think that Gabby had enough food and water on her back to cover her for 20 days? If this is a case of her walking off from him or wanting to be left and he granted her with that request, no way. Not in my opinion. She would have needed to go somewhere to get more food. I doubt she's out there hunting down and killing buffalo to eat with her 110-pound self. I think this would also speak to Brian being shitty, that he would be okay with that and is just peace out, alright, bye. Why on earth would she want to go off-grid completely in the middle of her cross-country trip when she didn't even want to be left behind and jump through the van's driver's side window to get in the car during their domestic incident? Or why would she have not just vanished while he was in Florida in August? Think about this hard. Do you think they had a fight and both went in opposite directions? In the body cam footage, she was worried about him leaving her, and he was afraid she was going to leave him. What are the odds they both walked away from each other during a future argument? What's the odds? And then when he returned, she was just poof, gone. And he was like, what? Oh, well, it's been fun. Thanks for the 2 years. I'm going home. Oh, yeah, and by the way, I'm taking your van. And just left. It doesn't add up, guys. I know we wanted to give Brian the benefit of the doubt here, but it doesn't add up. With Brian vanishing, it changes a lot. Why, as I said, would he, when he already had protection and support from his parents and his lawyer, would he feel the need to take off? The only explanation here that I can come up with is he wanted to be gone before more unfolded, like them finding Gabby, or finding something in the van, or finding something on her phone, or tracking her phone. The odds here are not great, but let's see what today brings as the search for missing Gabby Petito continues in Wyoming and the hunt for Brian Laundrie continues. By the time I upload this, it will be about 4 o'clock. I'll be back this evening if any updates come out. I wanted to go back to the basics and the timeline because people are going crazy and so far off into La La Land with some of the theories. As I said last night, the easiest and most simple answer is usually the right one. Okay? We don't need to go into crazy land. We just don't. We just don't. Actually, before I started recording this, I seen a post that somebody went to the library and ordered some book that Brian had on his Instagram that's supposed to be like murder or something. And they went to do that because they wanted to read it to see if he got any ideas from this book. People, calm down, okay? I'm a true crime follower. I know some who are listening are new. Maybe this is your first case. Maybe it's your second case. I've been following them for a really long time, okay? I've listened to some really gruesome videos. I've watched some really horrific things. I've read about terrible crimes. If you looked at my Google search, you'd think I was a murderer. Okay? Just because somebody reads a book, watches a movie, or a TV show, or a podcast about crimes, doesn't mean that they are a killer or will become a killer. Okay? He was reading a book. I know you're wanting to connect the two, but it really probably means absolutely nothing. And just before I finished recording this, I'm seeing breaking news. Says Northport Police just told NBC2 that Brian Laundrie's family did pick up his Mustang from the Carlton Preserve. Also, there's a possibility that Brian hurt himself out there in the preserve. So there's that. I kind of figure that his family did. The question here is, did Brian leave the keys in the car, or did they have a spare? And once they picked up the car, why did they not at that point call it in? They waited another 2 days. I have a bad feeling here about his family's involvement in his disappearance. Personally, I'm not accusing them, but I'm very concerned. But we're going to see what unfolds from here. So let's keep Gabby and her parents in our thoughts and hope for a miracle. Mouth-dropping impossible miracles have happened before. So let's just try to remain hopeful for them. Until next time, I'll see you soon.